In this how-to, we're going to create a sightseeing flight plan from scratch. I'm using Flight Plan for Flight Simulator, but a lot of what I'm going to talk about is applicable either way. If you want Flight Plan, just go to simflightplan.com, download it yourself, and give it a try. But we're going to go ahead and create a flight plan starting in World Map, and then we'll open it in Flight Plan and manipulate it from there using the Google Maps interface. Let's start in World Map, and I need some daylight here. Let me pick my X Cub only because the glass cockpit's easy to see on the video. Let's pick arrival and departure. Yeah, let's do Scotland. So Edinburgh departure, and then we'll just go to Newcastle. Actually, looks like there's some points of interest along the way, so let's just land south of, well, we're in the X Cub, we can land just about anywhere. Wasn't there one over here? We could just use this little airstrip. So we've got 117 mile flight. That's a good one. If you want an IFR, I typically wouldn't care, but if you want to save your IFR waypoints, you can do that as well. You can also set your weather and some other stuff here, but we can do all that in Flight Plan. I'm going to save to this PC, and then I'm going to open the flight plan I just saved in Flight Plan. Now, one thing I should talk about is if we look in the temp directory where I saved my file, there's actually 3 files. So Flight Simulator saves an FLT file, which is what Flight Plan recognizes, a PLN file, which is actually an XML format Flight Plan, and it contains only the waypoints. It has no settings for aircraft or time of day or anything like that. It's just the raw Flight Plan in an XML format. And then the SPB file contains Microsoft Flight Simulator specific settings. That's where like the parking spots are actually stored, and some other game specific stuff is stored in that. Flight Plan will preserve that file and copy it along with the other files, but it only generates an FLT file and a PLN file for your, as you change your flight plan. So now we've got the flight plan that we saved out of World Map in Google Maps, and I actually don't need the climb, cruise, descent, and approach waypoints, so I'm just going to delete them. And now I've just got my airports, and Flight Simulator doesn't save the name of the airport, so let's go ahead and fill this out. I guess this is probably just Newcastle Airport. Oh, that's right, this was just a tiny little airstrip, so we'll just call it Middlesbrough. And then some of the other things you might want to do in Flight Plan is you can fill your tanks in the aircraft settings. If you're flying small aircraft, your wing tanks or your center tanks are typically all you need. What I like to do is just fill them all. That way, if I switch between, say, some of the sportier aircraft only have center tanks versus wing tanks on most of your small aircraft. But if I fill all 3, then I'm good either way. If I just decide to flip between the aircraft, say between like the X Cub and the Cessna 152 or the Skyhawk or the DA-40 or any of the single engine propeller aircraft, I think virtually all of them either have a wing tank, a center tank, or both. And it doesn't hurt to have extra fuel in extra tanks. So I mean, you could literally fill all of these to 100%, and depending on which aircraft you load, it's only going to use the ones it needs. But that'll save me the headache of having to get fuel after I spawn. I can also set my time of day. I usually like to fly in the summer because the days are longer. Noon's fine. We'll talk about some of these other settings in a minute. And then I can save it. Now, when I save this flight plan, it's going to overwrite my FLT file, and it's going to generate the PLN file. And I'll show you how those are used once we go back into Flight Simulator. What we want to do is take our flight plan and put the interesting sites along the way on it so that we can easily find the things we want to see along the way. I know there were some points of interest in Edinburgh. We got Edinburgh Castle, Dynamic Earth, House of Parliament. If we give ourselves some elbow room here and then move the map where we can see them both. And in fact, if I just want to look on satellite, it should match almost exactly. I want a push pin on, so we want Edinburgh Castle. Here, it's probably easier even to see on the map. So Edinburgh Castle, we want to insert that after the airport. I'll just call it waypoint 1. And it's holding the altitude of the previous waypoint. This is going to be all flat, but if I was flying to the top of a mountain or something, you might want to put an altitude in. I'll just leave it at 0. I mean, we're going to fly at 1,500 feet above sea level. I don't know that we need waypoints for everything. There was the Dynamic Earth Palace of HolyroodHouse, so we'll put that one on because I like the name. Is it Holly or Holy? Holy. And I'll just call it waypoint 2. Somewhere in here was the Scottish House of Parliament. Looks like there's a bunch of things to see, but we don't need to put waypoints. I mean, this is, if we look, that's less than a mile between, it's 5 miles from the airport to Edinburgh Castle, but then it's less than a mile between those two. So there's no point in putting a whole bunch of push pins. I've got my radiuses turned on. If these bother you, you can go into your aircraft settings and turn the radiuses on and off. But that's a 1,000 foot and a 500 foot radius. We don't need push pins for all these points in between. Let's see, was there other? No, that looks like it. There's a whole group of Microsoft Flight Simulator points of interest all through here. And then what we can do is use Google imagery to see if there's some other interesting places to see. Like that seems like a pretty substantial castle to me. And we can check world map, zoom out a bit, see if there's more to be found. Flores Castle in Kelso. Move this over here. So we're looking for Kelso, basically along our flight path. I didn't pay attention to how far out of Edinburgh that was. Oh, it's quite a ways, okay. And it was Flores Castle in Kelso. There's Kelso. And there's Flores Castle. Although that push pin is usually for gardens. The castle, let's make sure. Well, see, it says, that says Flores Castle. But this looks more like a castle to me. The little turrets and stuff. Oh, but those are interiors. Guess we'll have to fly out there and take a look. Alright, and let's switch back to our map. Oh, we were checking for flight simulator points of interest. So there's a couple in Newcastle? No. Guess that's Felling. So we'll find the Tyne Bridge. Oh, there's Felling. And our bridge looks to be right here. You can see the river goes around, up through here. Queen Elizabeth, there's a bunch of bridges, but I believe this is the one we want. Let's see, is that it? There's actually Angel of the North, Durham Cathedral. Cathedrals are usually worth the trip, and then another bridge down by the airport. I guess we'll do the transporter bridge for our flight plan. We can check out some of these other sites along the way. Let's see, this bridge is the Tees Transporter Bridge. So we're coming in past the first bend, and it should be right here, right? Yeah, it's right. It's on this leg of the river. I only see one bridge. And so that's a complete flight plan with all of the Microsoft Flight Simulator points of interest selected. And then I can go in, well actually this is just one we found on the Google map, but then what you can do is just follow along your flight path looking for other points of interest you might want to hit along the way, and then you can see if there's any photogrammetry, anything worth deviating from the flight path to see. Like that looks like a pretty substantial castle. Maybe that's worth the however many mile. That's going to be a fairly substantial difference. So we can take from there, zoom in to here, and that's 23 miles out of my way, basically. All right, now I'm going to delete that one off. We'll just go ahead and fly this as is. Now, I want to save my changes because I've added waypoints. We've already set our time of day that we want to fly, and then it's got me set at pre-flight hold short, which is fine. Oh, I know what I wanted to show. I want to place my aircraft at the end of the runway, and of course you could park wherever you want to park, but right now it's going to spawn me in the middle of the runway, which for the X-Cub's probably fine, but I'm going to drop myself here on the apron, and then this is, what runway was that? So this is runway 06. I think the flight plan has me taking off the other direction. Right. So we'll change our runway to 06 so that we're pointed the right direction. One thing I should have pointed out, when you move your starting push pin, notice what it says. So it wants to move my waypoint. Yes. It's an airport, so it's warning me, are you sure you want to move that? Yes. And then, do I want the aircraft placed at that position? Yes. By saying yes to that prompt, that changes this latitude and longitude and altitude in this case to place my aircraft, and then I can select my pitch, bank, and heading. Now the heading that Flight Simulator outputs is in relative degrees, so that would be -300 brings you around to 60 degrees. You could also just enter 60, but for some reason it uses relative. You can select whether you want to be on the runway, pre-flight gate, pre-flight pushback, hold short. Really, that's where we are, is we're on the hold short. But I'm going to make it flight runway, so we're ready to take off. Now, if I wanted to fly IFR, I can set my flight plan type to be IFR, which, if you recall, when I saved one in World Map, I'll go ahead and save my changes. When I saved it in World Map, I went ahead and included an ATC flight plan. So you can see my little checkboxes lit up here for the ATC IFR. This label changes because you might also have a bush trip flight plan. So basically, the file has multiple flight plans. So this is the ATC IFR flight plan with the appropriate altitudes and waypoints for the IFR flight plan, or if I deselect it, here's my sightseeing flight plan. They're both saved as a part of the flight plan. I selected the NX Cub. Now, the main reason there's no new button up here to create a flight plan from scratch using flight plan is because of the aircraft, right? Because there's hundreds of settings and they're all different for all different aircraft, and that list of aircraft is forever growing between what's on the marketplace and what comes with the game. So it's virtually impossible for flight plan to make sure all those settings are correct. Now, if you just want to load a flight plan, in other words, the route, and I don't care about my date settings or my aircraft or anything else, I can go into World Map and load the flight plan and just load the PLN file, and it's going to load my sightseeing trip with whatever aircraft I happen to have selected or that I want to select, and I can use my route. But if I load the flight plan that I've saved and configured, in other words, I have full fuel tanks, I've told it specifically where I want my aircraft to spawn, I've told it what time of day and what day of the year I want, I've already specified my runways at both ends. None of that loaded when I loaded my PLN file. The only thing that loaded was the individual waypoints. So now if I go back in and load the full flight plan that I just created, which is the FLT file, it's going to have all my settings preloaded. I can't change my aircraft. I can't change anything about this flight plan. It's all set. Although the weather conditions, there's an option where weather can be live. In other words, if weather can be live, you can use live weather or not use live weather, depending on what your normal settings are, how you normally fly. Like I normally like a nice sunny day everywhere I fly, so that's what I have it set to. But if I normally fly with live weather, this would come up with live weather. And it's actually showing our IFR flight plan because that's what I told it I wanted. But once we get in the aircraft, it spawned me where I wanted to be at the end of the runway. If I look at my tanks, my fuel tanks are full, my flaps are deployed, so I'm ready to take off. And you'll notice that it's loaded my sightseeing flight plan. Oh, this is actually a touchscreen. It's got all my waypoints listed, so now I can use my autopilot on some of the long legs and just let the aircraft take me from one point to the next. I mean, I could fly this entire route on autopilot and it would just take me from point of interest to point of interest to point of interest. I like to set an altitude. I'll pick 2,500 feet. And now we can see in cockpit map, as I fly, I'll have my radiuses to help me find my points of interest on the ground. It's telling me where my current waypoint is, and this will follow along with the glass cockpit. And when I turn on GPS follow, it'll center my aircraft and give me my real-time mileage to my next waypoint, which in this case is Edinburgh Castle. I need to set what my preferred zoom level is, because this is going to be the zoom level it returns to every time GPS follows turned back on. So let's say I was checking out my map and I wanted to switch to satellite and zoom way in so I can look at Edinburgh Castle ahead of time. And then of course I can use Google's tools to rotate around. I can use Peggy here to check out the views. That shouldn't be hard to spot. And then when I just hit GPS follow, it drops me back to where my aircraft is using the zoom level I have set here and the map type I have set here. Now that's especially handy in flight because one click sets you back the way you like to fly. You can also set your transparency, so if you want to mimic a heads-up display while you're flying, you can basically create almost a strip map across the top. It's basically a heads-up display, but for the purposes of our video, I will leave it all the way up so it shows up better. And let me just take off and I'll show you a couple features and we're done. But our flight plan is created. And as you can see, all I've got to do is follow my glass cockpit and it's going to lead me straight to each of my waypoints, in this case my points of interest. And in fact, I can use my autopilot, turn on my flight director, but I don't actually want to go up to 2,500 feet, so I'm not going to use the autopilot on this leg. But I can easily follow my flight path on the map, and I don't even have to use my electronics while I'm sightseeing. I can just follow my progress on the map. And as I fly, I can keep an eye out for other sites I might want to change course and check out. All the normal Google push pins and sites, road names. If you want to cheat on the bush trips, you can just load up your Google map. I wouldn't consider it cheating actually, because I mean, you'd have a map available to you if you were flying it. But in the in-game bush trips, the VFR map, I mean, you can open it right now. You know, obviously the VFR map only shows you waypoints. In fact, it doesn't even show our custom waypoints. It only shows valid, true waypoints. And you don't get your river names or street names or anything like that. Whereas, of course, with Google Maps, you get everything. There's our Edinburgh Castle. So we should be coming up on HolyroodHouse. There it is. And there's our other, what was that, Dynamic Earth. There's our palace. And then I thought, wasn't the House of Parliament here somewhere? I don't see Parliament on the map. There's the university. There's Edinburgh Castle again. But there's our HolyroodHouse Palace and Dynamic Earth Museum, also points of interest. Oh, Scottish Parliament building is right underneath us. That's it. It's right there. Oh, and this is probably a good time for me to take a screenshot so that later we can upload it and we'll have an image. So if we play our cards right, climb this. And we'll take that. I'm going to crash. And then when you're done flying and you want to share your route with your friends, you can post it under your own username. I'm logged in as TechStan, or you can just let it upload as simflightplan. You can include your list of waypoints and descriptions, so that's your list of waypoints and distances. I'll show you that in a minute. And then I can also type whatever I want if I want to put in some additional description. And then we'll include an image now. I already edited my image. I didn't show you that part. You can use whatever program you use to resize or crop an image. You can see that it was a 4 meg image, which is going to be too big. Everything has to be under 2 meg to include when you upload a flight plan. So basically what I always do is I go in and I'll crop the image to 1024 by 576, I think it is. But just set the width to 1024 and keep whatever the aspect ratio is. It always comes out the right size. Small enough anyway. And then once it's been uploaded, you just go back to simflightplan.com, and in the download section, in this case it's the most recent one, so it's at the very top, with my screenshot and my list of waypoints with the distances between each waypoint, what I flew, and the title of the flight plan, which I didn't change, but of course you can reset the name and the title. Here's my title and here's my description. It automatically picks up the aircraft. This is the additional text that I entered, and it included my name like I asked it to. And now if you want to download this, just sign up at simflightplan.com, download and fly it yourself. That's all I've got for today, so I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe.